Hello, let me talk about My Man Godfrey, a 1936 movie which I watched of travesties of travesties, colorized on Tubi on this phone. Um, but I've been kind of inspired to do this. Well, because I do enjoy watching kind of the old Hollywood movies every once in a while. But I listen to a podcast called Critically Acclaimed, and they're one of their offshoots that they're doing as a Patreon thing. Is they're going through all the kind of the Hollywood, all the Oscar nominees from the beginning to the present, and I've just kind of jumped on that train, and they're kind of going through all the things. I don't think they've gotten to 1936 yet. This movie actually um, did quite well, at least in nominations uh, for for the thing, and um, starring William Powell and Carol Lombard. She is a socialite who her much more kind of cold-hearted sister and her boyfriend are doing the scavenger hunt, and I guess she's sort of tagging along doing it as well. And they try, and her sister, played by Alice Brady, um, in a very kind of cool, intense role, um, tries to hire him for $5 to haul him as a part of the scavenger hunt, which is we need to find a forgotten man. And this being 1931, there is a plethora of forgotten men. Stock market crash has happened. The Great Depression is in full flight, and there are tons of forgotten men. And he takes rather against that, and kind of doesn't push her. Well, he sort of pushes her back onto an ash heap, and just basically chases them off. But um, Carol Lombard's character actually says, engages in conversation, says like, gee, I wish I could, get you to come with me because I've never beat her at anything. And she's definitely a much more kind-hearted soul. And he ends up going along with her, and and they win. But she also says, no, I'd like, well, he says like, anything I can do to help you. And he says, well, you can give me a job. And so she says, oh, well, great, we lost our last butler, you can be our butler. And he does come, and they've apparently gone through tons and tons of butlers. The maid there, um, nice kind of comedic, a fun performance, says like, oh yeah, we've gone through tons of them. Here, have your hat and coat by the door. And he gets kind of involved with this family, and the sister tries and pulls more stuff. She's got a real kind of good hard edge to her, the sister, played by Alice Brady. And this is the Bullocks. Um, Eugene Pallett plays the patriarch, this kind of very deep voiced actor who I've seen in a lot of stuff. He actually kind of reminds me of in Clueless, the father in Clueless, whose name just completely forgets me, but it's very much the same kind of character actor role. Um, and we learn things. It's one of these disappointing things is you do find out, well, basically he's somebody who is either was formerly rich, or he went to Harvard and all this stuff, so he's not really kind of the salt of the earth kind of guy. But he actually does have very much, he's not someone who just wants to get out of this again. He's like, no, it's important that I actually help all these guys also down at the docks at this junkyard, which is just getting refuse poured into it, and they, by implication, are the refuse as well. And saying, a derelict is just a man, but a man who without a job, and I want to give them jobs. So that's done well. Carol Dunbar's character is very much, it's she's not spoiled, but she's definitely kind of just an airhead. She's someone who has deep emotional needs, and he seems to kind of cotton on to that, and you kind of respect him because he's like, okay, I'm going to get out of here because you're just focusing on me too much. But this is a romantic screwball comedy, so by the end, um, things happen in romantic screwball comedies that you expect to happen. But um, she kind of gives it enough of Carol Lombard gives it enough of an edge that you kind of go, oh, she is kind of emotionally disturbed, and if this wasn't a comedy, this could go to other places. So there's a little bit enough of a kind of a grounding there, that and the whole thing of the depression, but also keeping it kind of upbeat. It's an interesting mix of finding a comedy in something which is definitely also commenting on how we're throwing all these human beings on the ash heap. Um, so yeah, it's like it's a flight of fancy, but it's not totally escapism, which is kind of cool in a movie like this. Powell, Lombard, I think Alice Brady, and the guy who plays sort of the funny foreigner, all got nominations for like best actor or best supporting. The funny foreigner guy is sort of something that probably played as a lot funnier back in the thing of like, haha, funny foreigner. I think of in Faulty Towers, Manuel was hilarious back then, whereas that probably seen as fairly um, xenophobic, xenophobic now, making fun of the foreigners. Oh, there, that was your dog interval. Um, so that part falls flat. Maybe just that Lombard is such kind of a woman child is not as great nowadays. Um, it's definitely much more Powell is kind of he's the fantasy of the great servant, and that the great servant turns out to be actually one of them. It's like it's like the orphan of uncertain parentage, which of course means that they're actually noble themselves. It's got that kind of old roots to it, which is I guess why it works, but why it also is a little bit of a cop out in something that might be commenting on, poor people. It's not that they deserve to be poor. It's just that's life circumstance, and that you should maybe actually have some decency with them. So yeah, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed my man Godfrey, William Powell, and I should really get to his Thin Man series at some point, because they were talking about that. One of the movies that was talked about in one of the earlier podcasts. Um, it's also a nice connection for me because kind of that screwball comedy kind of banter. I definitely see that in the kind of the short stories of S. Scott Fitzgerald, which I'm reading at the moment. And that's kind of that fun banter part of it is like, oh, okay, I recognize that from these kind of movies, and then these kind of movies definitely have influences on kind of the kind of movie banter that we get nowadays that still survives to a certain degree, especially in the more slick, that kind of Hollywood production kind of thing. So yeah. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.